Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second round of community workshops. Our first two workshops were held back in February, and we had a really great turnout. My name is Carol Chariot, and I'm the project manager for this Pruneridge Avenue Complete Streets Plan. Next. If you can't stay with us the whole time, that's okay, but please stay connected with us via our project's dedicated webpage, or please feel free to send us an email or voicemail. And just to let you know, once again, these sessions are being recorded, and I'll post the recordings on the project's webpage so you can view it at a later time. Next. The agenda for tonight, I'll give some brief introductions to city and consultant staff. We'll do a short tutorial on Zoom and Poll Everywhere. We'll have 2 question and answer sessions. We'll give you a brief update on what we've been doing with the project since the last community meetings. And a majority of our time will be going over our corridor design concepts and pedestrian intersection improvements for the project. And finally, we'll go over next steps for the project. Next. Once again, my name is Carol Chariot, and I'm the project manager for the project. I also have with me here tonight, Michael Liu, our Assistant Public Works Director, Jonathan Yee, our Transportation Manager, and from the consultant side of Alta Planning and Design, I have Jeff Knowles, Ryan Booth, and Ben Frazier. Next. Once again, we're at our second round of community workshops where we're really excited to share with you our draft roadway concepts. In less than a year, we'll have our final round of community workshops where we'll show you our draft plan for the project and also share with you our revised roadway concepts based on comments we get from you, the public, and our committees and commissions. Then in about a year, we'll take the plan to City Council for review and consideration. Please remember that this is a planning level document and the city does not have any current funding for the design or construction of the project. Next. Ways to stay involved, please once again, go to our webpage or send us an email or voicemail. And currently we do have an online survey on the webpage that runs through the end of August where we're collecting your feedback on these draft concepts that we're going to share with you tonight. Next. And I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Knowles from Alta.
Thanks, Carol. Jeff Knowles from Alta Planning Design. So great to be with you all. I wish we could be in person meeting with you, but given COVID situation that continues and persists, the safest thing to do is to meet with you in the comfort of your own home. So thanks for joining with us. I'm going to go over some technology really briefly before we get into the heart of the matter here. We're using Zoom this evening. There are multiple ways to interact with us through Zoom. At any time, please feel free to type questions and comments in the Q&A window, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. If it doesn't show up, just use your mouse to scroll down and that should appear, the Q&A button. You can click on that and ask a question at any point. You can also raise your hand to speak during the Q&A sessions, and there'll be a raise hand button that illuminates when we're at those Q&A points during this workshop. So when you click on that, you'll enter a queue, and then I'll go running down a list of people that want to provide their comments and speak, and we'll be able to hear from everybody. Just a reminder, the meeting is being recorded and it'll be posted online. So if any point you have to drop off, the connection is bad, you've got a crying kid at home that needs attention, don't worry, we'll have it posted online within about a week of this workshop, if not sooner. Also, if any of your neighbors or friends or coworkers missed this meeting, we can send out the link and so you can have that and share that as well. This is a screenshot of what those buttons will look like, the raise hand button, also the Q&A button at the bottom. In addition to Zoom, we're using Poll Everywhere as an interactive polling software so that we can get feedback, live feedback during the conversation this evening. The website that I'm asking everybody to go into a separate web browser now and enter in is pollev.com. alta-planning107. Please keep this page open. We'll be turning on new polls throughout the presentation. It's live interactive, and some of them will be sharing out the results with this group. I will mention that Internet Explorer has some compatibility issues. And so if you have the opportunity, use a web browser like Edge or Chrome or Firefox. Those typically have less issues. You can also take out your cell phone and take the poll through your cell phone. You can open up a web browser in your phone and type in the same URL, or you can text the number of the word alta-planning107 to the number 22333. Again, it's alta-planning107 to the number 22333. If this is your first time using Poll EV everywhere, it'll ask you to enter a screen name, like your first name and last initial. You can skip the step if you choose. You'll be taken to a landing page. This page will update with polls throughout the presentation once we activate them. You will not need to navigate anywhere else to use Poll Everywhere. If at any time you navigate away from the polls page, just either hit the home button and re-enter alta-planning107, or just simply re-enter the whole URL at the top, alta-planning107 in your URL bar. So let's just do a test. We've got a good group of folks here. We've got over 50 people here. So let's just take a test and see if everybody can participate with us. So are you able to access Poll Everywhere? Go ahead and log in, pollev.com/alta-planning107, and enter yes, or if you're using your cell phone, text alta-planning107 to the number 22333 and hit A. All right, we've got 51 attendees with us this evening, and 35 people have completed Poll Everywhere. Of course, it's optional if you don't want to participate that way. There are other ways to engage with us, the Q&A button at any point or during our live Q&A sessions. All right, I'm gonna give just one more minute to do the test poll. Thanks everybody for bearing with. We're about to go to our first live poll, so buckle up. All right, here we go. So we're trying to get an understanding of the people that are in the room, the virtual room with us. We want to know, where do you live? On or within a few blocks of Pruneridge Avenue, a different area within the city, in a neighboring city, or somewhere else? So overwhelming, the folks that are here tonight live directly on Pruneridge or within a few blocks in the neighborhood. That's great. Great. Thanks for the participation. 40 people taking that poll. So great representation of the folks in the room tonight. We're always trying to do better about getting the word out about meetings like this that affect residents. And so we're interested to know how you heard about the meeting tonight. Over 7,700 postcards were mailed out within everybody that lives within a half mile of the corridor. The project was promoted on the website, the city's website, through various social media channels, including Nextdoor, Twitter, Facebook, the City of Santa Clara email, and the city manager's blog. Maybe you heard about it through word of mouth, through a neighbor. Great, leave it open for a few more seconds. Great, there are also some questions this evening that are not showing up here. We're not reporting them, but it's good for information to us collect about gender and race this evening. We want to make sure that what we're representing is representative of the city of Santa Clara. So if you are able to, please enter those questions. Of course, it'll be anonymous. So take a minute there to answer that question. Okay, and just one more question, then we're gonna take a quick pause in just a minute and open the lines up to ask any questions you're having about the technology this evening. Let's go ahead and answer that one additional question, just to understand the racial ethnic makeup of the folks in the room tonight. And again, the reason that we're asking these questions is just to help us promote better ways of getting the word out to different groups that may be affected by this project. We really do want to hear from everyone. And so we want to collect as much good input as we can. And so this is one way that we're doing that. And we're looking for feedback about other ways that we can improve our outreach methods. All right. Thanks everybody for participating. We've reached our first Q&A session. I'm asking folks if you've got any questions related to Zoom, if it's not working for you, if you want us to try and work through that, or poll EV if you're having any sort of technical issues. Now's the chance to ask that in the Q&A box, or you can go ahead and click the raise hand button, and we can identify you and let you a chance to ask your question about the technology. Then we'll get into the project itself. And from there, we can ask more questions, get your feedback, and ask questions about the concepts. So for right now, just about technology. Okay, I see one question, Helen Johnson. Go ahead, Helen.
I'm having difficulty getting into poll everywhere. It wasn't successful.
Okay. Ben, could you resend that out in the chat box? Helen, are you able to see the chat window?
Yes.
There is should be a link that maybe Ben could resend. There it goes, fresh. Helen, try and clicking on that link in the chat box and let us know if that helps you.
You say you must have done something wrong. I'm just seeing a screen waiting for Alta Planning 107 presentation to begin. But I was already.
I think we've closed the polls for now. And so they're yeah, just keep that window open, Helen. And when we activate a new poll, it will populate there. So just need to keep that open. But you're in.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Helen. All right, does anybody else have any other questions in the Q&A window here? Let's see. A question from William Sterling. Neglected to show the results of some of the poll questions. I like to see results regarding gender and ethnic identity. I don't have those right now, William, but we can include those in a summary of tonight's meeting. Great. Okay, anything else related to technology? All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for bearing with. I appreciate it. I know it's a little bit, sometimes it can be difficult working through with all this new tech, but we appreciate getting your input this way. All right, so just to provide a quick overview of the project and updates, we're often asked, what's going on? Why are you studying Pruneridge Avenue? Pruneridge Avenue was included in the city's general plan, and it's a high priority corridor in both the city and county bicycle plans for recommended bikeway improvements. It fills in a gap in the bicycle network. It implements the city's Complete Streets policy, 18-8593. Complete streets are streets that serve multiple different users, drivers, people taking transit, people walking, people in wheelchairs, and people bicycling. And so the idea with the complete street is to try and make accommodations for all different types of road users. It helps achieve the city's climate action plan goals of reducing single occupancy vehicle trips and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. And also as an opportunity to look at opportunities for enhancing safety and comfort for everyone. The study area runs from Pomeroy Avenue to Winchester Boulevard, which is your city border with the city of San Jose. It's roughly 3 miles. I think everybody here is very well aware because you live on it or close by. It's a 4-lane roadway with posted speeds of 40 miles per hour. At the last 2 workshops that we held, we asked folks that were joining us what the priorities should be for a future vision on Pruneridge. The number one thing that came down, we heard from again and again, not just through the workshops, but through the survey results, through emails we received and voicemail calls, is to calm or slow down the traffic speeds. That's probably the most recurring comment that we would get, is that people just drive like it's a highway. So if there's anything that we can do in our concepts to reduce traffic speeds, that's something that we're hearing from the community. Reducing traffic congestion is another top concern. Improving bicycle options and walking options come in at 3rd and 4th. And preserving on-street parking was the 5th most high priority out of the ones that were provided at the last rounds of workshops. We asked people using, this is a word jumble or word cloud, the words that are larger are the ones that show up more. We asked folks what their vision is for the future of Pruneridge. And in our first workshop, we had a lot of great things come up, but bike lanes and bike safety was the top theme, followed by 4 travel lanes or leave as is, came up as 2nd. Traffic calming and complete streets came in 3rd. Overall safety and pedestrian issues in 4th, and residential character, which we assume to be preserving the residential character. In our second workshop, just like this round, we're doing a Thursday night and a Saturday afternoon, so we can hopefully get as many people with their schedules as possible. At the Saturday afternoon, back in February, traffic calming rose to the top. Parking was number 2 in terms of the vision, and bike lanes the 3rd, followed by safety for pedestrians and keeping the corridor as is in 5th. So engagement to date. As I mentioned, 7,700 postcards have been mailed out for the first round of workshops, and again as well for the second round of workshops. We hope you received that postcard with information about tonight's workshop. We had 120 people attend the combined number for both workshops back in February. Great response rate for our survey. 738 people have taken the survey so far. We've received 27 voicemail messages with comments and 68 emails. In addition, we've held 5 focus groups with the City of Cupertino, Cupertino Union, and Santa Clara Unified School Districts, the Santa Clara Public Health Department, Apple as a major employer nearby this corridor, and the Quarry and Forest, Pruneridge, and Old Quad neighborhood associations. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Ryan Booth, who's going to walk you through these concepts. And as Carol mentioned, I just want to make it really clear that the city received a Caltrans grant to study this corridor. The grant only looks at conducting community outreach, coming up with these concepts, and evaluating those concepts to look at benefits and potential trade-offs. It's still up to the city council to decide if the city would like to move forward. And if they do decide to move forward, funding would still need to be acquired for the next stage of actually designing this and coming up with construction. So nothing's been decided at this point. The opportunity is really just to look at what the future of Pruneridge could be and how bike lanes, pedestrian accommodations could be made on the street to improve conditions as they are today. So with that in mind, I'm turning things over to Ryan.
Thanks, Jeff. Before we begin here, I just want to remind everybody that the following images are the same designs that are posted on the project website. So if you hadn't a chance, please, after this presentation, visit there. We've removed some of the text here for clarity, but all the details are available on the project website, and there's a concept design survey for you to take a closer look at your own pace and let us know what you think. So we're presenting here today. We have 4 concepts, including this existing condition or no build option. What you see here is an illustration that represents the majority of the existing conditions along Pruneridge Ave. Pruneridge, as it is today, from Pomeroy to Winchester, has a residential context. The majority of the Pruneridge corridor is lined with single-family homes that define the area's residential character. If you look towards the roadway, it's got 2 traffic lanes in either direction, along with parking available along the curb. intersections and corners currently, sweeping corners and long crossing distances for sidewalk users, and that the existing design promotes higher vehicle speeds compared to tighter corners that could be available. These intersection designs are based on old design standards that are now out of date. Another thing enhancing the residential character of the street are canopy trees that line the street. So there's intermittent mature trees that are spread along the corridor. They provide shade where present. However, most of the trees are set back from the road on private property and do not provide much shade or comfort for the pedestrian. Next slide, please. And just to reiterate, this illustration is not of any one specific intersection, but a representation of what may be possible along the majority of Pruneridge Ave. So concept one, preserves 4 traffic lanes. In order to preserve 4 traffic lanes and fit some of the other features, we've had to reduce the parking lane to one side of the road. Other features included on this concept include the buffered bike lanes. So it's a bike lane with a little extra space added for safety to buffer the bicyclists from the road. Curb extensions, as you see there in the top of the image, and high visibility crosswalks could fit at select intersections. And what this does is it enhances the pedestrian safety by increasing visibility and reducing crossing length. So it actually takes you shorter to cross the street, reducing your exposure to possible traffic. And in the light green, you'll see additional canopy trees. And these are proposed strictly within the public right-of-way and not on private property. But in order to fit them in, they'll have to be on the outside of the sidewalk to provide shade for pedestrian comfort. Next slide, please. So here we are in concept 2, and it differs from the previous concept in that it has only one vehicle lane each direction with the center turn lane. Now the center turn lane allows vehicles to safely pull in out of driveways. Center turn lanes have been shown to reduce vehicle speeds and increase safety for all users. Once the center turn lane approaches the intersection, it turns into a dedicated turn lane. It allows for left turn and right turn movements. Again, we have the curb extensions, high visibility crosswalks, and marking for bicycles. This concept here, as you can see, preserves parking on both sides of the street and adds the canopy trees as well for pedestrian comfort. Next slide, please. And this one is very similar to concept 2. You've got 2 vehicle lanes, one in each direction, a center turn lane. However, what we've shown here is a bike lane that goes along the curb with the parking between the bike lane and the travel lane. What this does is adds added protection for cyclists. And in order to preserve view distances and be able to, for ease of pulling in and out of the driveway, we've pulled some of the parking back away so that people can see both the cyclists, oncoming traffic, and where they're aiming their car to drive in. Again, similar to the previous concepts at the corners, in order to accommodate a bike lane at the curb, we've changed the configuration a little bit, but it still shortens the crossing distance for pedestrians, allows for cyclists to get through, and reduces the speed of turning vehicles to reduce some of that cut through turning motion. All right, so that was pretty quick. We're going to revisit these. Next slide, please. So quick snap poll here. This is the first concept, which preserves 4 traffic lanes, adds buffered bike lanes similar to what you'd see on either east of the corridor or west of the corridor that's existing, and preserves 1 lane for parking. So I'll just give it a couple minutes for people to respond here. And again, just remind everybody that these are available for a closer look at your own pace. You can see all the details on the project website, and included on that project website is a specific survey, which is specific to these concept designs, which you can let us know what you think. All right. Just a couple more minutes. Looks like people still answering. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is for concept 2. Concept 2, as a reminder, introduces the center turn lane, 1 vehicle lane in each direction, buffered bike lanes, and preserves 2 parking lanes, 1 on each side of the street. Similar protection at corners for pedestrian safety improvements, as well as reduced vehicle turning speeds. This concept here is very similar to what you'd see west of Pomeroy or east of Winchester. All right, so got a few pollsters coming in here, so we'll give it just a brief couple seconds here. Just as a reminder, feel free to add your questions to the Q&A button, and there'll be an option for some live Q&A later as well. All right, looks like, there we go. So here we are with concept 3, parking protected option. So again, this differs from the previous one as the bike lanes are against the curb. That's added protection for cyclists, allows parking to remain along the corridor on both sides, center turn lane, 1 vehicle lane in each direction. What I neglected to mention before was at these corners, what you see with the blue and the green, this is all just paint and vertical bollards, kind of what we call a quick build option. This allows us to implement strategies quickly, test them out, see how it works for this specific community. And again, this is for select intersections. Not every intersection this is appropriate for, but the majority along the corridor. All right, let's see, next slide here. All right, so again, please tell us if you have more to say. Is there any other clarification that you need to provide an opinion today? If you have specific comments or questions on these concepts, please, again, visit the project website, take a closer look at your own pace, and fill out the survey design. All right. And just one more reminder here. Again, feel free after today's presentation to visit the project website. We're not asking anybody to necessarily vote on any concepts, but what works for you, what doesn't work for you, just give us your feedback on each concept, including the existing conditions or no build option. Still getting some responses here for the poll EVs. Got an open answer box there. So if you haven't had a chance, please go ahead and put your comment in that poll EV. Once again, all these options are available with accompanying text and detail on the project website, or you can follow a link to a concept design specific survey and let us know again what works for you with the concept, what doesn't, and any additional questions you might have.
Thanks, Ryan. We're going to give folks just 5 more seconds. So if you can't get it all in, save your question, type it into the Q&A box, or send us an email. We'd be happy to get your feedback. But yeah, is there any other information that you need from the design team or from the city to form an opinion? All right, Ben has told me that he's going to keep it open, so we're not going to cut anybody off. So we're going to keep that poll open for a little while longer if you're still formulating a question for us. All right. I've got one more piece of information to go through before we open it up to our Q&A session. So in addition to the bicycle traffic, parking, intersection treatments, options that Ryan just walked through, we've also looked at potential tools for improving the experience of people walking and crossing the street in both signalized and unsignalized locations. I want to go through quickly. There are 9 different pedestrian crossing improvement tools that come directly from the approved city pedestrian master plan. The pedestrian crossing sign is something that we could look at, alerting motorists to the presence of a marked crosswalk. It can be placed parallel or in advance of a crosswalk, and particularly useful in locations where crosswalks may not be expected by motorists, so at, we would think, unsignalized locations. High visibility crosswalk markings, these are the ladder, or some people call them the zebra stripes. They're useful pattern to let people know, make it very visible to motorists that they're about to cross space that's shared with pedestrians. In addition, advanced yield or stop lines. These inform motorists of the correct position where they need to wait for pedestrians and yield to them at those marked crossing locations. Curb ramps provide transition between the sidewalk and the roadway crossing, provide universal access for all users, including people using wheeled mobility devices, small kids, adults pushing strollers, people with luggage. There's usually a tactile warning surface, a rough surface, so that people who have visual impairments can detect the edge of the curb. Curb extensions, Ryan showed some examples of what this could look like. Extensions of the sidewalk and the curb at the corners of intersections, typically the width of a parking lane. You can't park right at the edge of a street anyway, and so it's taking that back and giving that room so that pedestrians can have a shorter crossing experience. It also helps calm traffic and slows traffic speeds. Improve right turn slip lanes. There aren't too many right turn slip lanes, but at San Tomas Expressway, that comes to mind. This could be improving those in terms of the dimensions to make it so that motorists are more teed up and looking directly at the crosswalk. So reducing those conflicts, increasing visibility there. Countdown timers and accessible pedestrian signals, also known as APS. This is making sure that all the countdown timers not only indicate when it's appropriate for the pedestrian to walk or to hurry up, but having countdown timers to indicate the time left of that signal phase. And then the APS, which is that audible alert so that people who are blind can be alerted to their turn to cross the street. So this is something that would come in a package together, improvements at those signalized locations. A leading pedestrian interval. This is where the red light stays on for cars, but the walk signal starts 3 to 7 seconds, giving the pedestrians a head start to establish themselves in the crosswalk, increasing visibility and decreasing the chance of a collision with a vehicle. Finally, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. These are user-activated pedestrian beacons that use flashing high-intensity LED lights to alert motorists to the presence of a pedestrian in the crosswalk. They can be installed at any uncontrolled crossing location and are usually powered through solar panels. So we're proposing the following combination of tools for 2 types of intersections that we see along Pruneridge Avenue. For signalized intersections, we're looking at redesigning, improving the right turn slip lanes where they exist, adding in the countdown timers with that accessible pedestrian signal, leading pedestrian intervals, changing the crosswalk markings, adding curb ramps, advanced yield markings, and signage. At unsignalized locations, looking at curb extensions, rapid flashing beacons, high visibility crosswalks, curb ramps, signage, and advanced signs. Now, more analysis engineering will need to happen at each individual location to figure out where these are most appropriate. But these are the two combinations we're looking at. We want to know from you if you've got other ideas about how to improve the pedestrian experience, particularly crossing Pruneridge Avenue. So if you have additional ideas, we'd love to hear that through the Q&A session, through the Q&A box, through an email or a voicemail. Or if you need additional information about what I've presented, please go ahead and share that opinion. We'll give just a minute here, and then we will cease our presentation and go right into Q&A, and then we'll start to answer questions in the Q&A box, along with your feedback and questions. So grab a drink of water, and we'll get over there in just 1 minute. All right. I really appreciate all of the Q&A that we're seeing coming in. So keep it coming. Lots of great discussion happening, and we appreciate it. We'll get to those questions. So, all right, just 10 more seconds, and then we're going to move on to our Q&A session. All right, folks. So at this point, I'd like for our team to activate the raise hand function. There should now be a button at the bottom of your screen next to the Q&A box. At this point, you can raise your hand if you'd like to have the chance to opportunity to ask a question or provide your feedback. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to start with Atisha. Atisha, go ahead. You're able to provide your feedback. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you. Just to be transparent, I'm a BPAC member, but my comments are purely my own. This is great work, and I love the time. Carol, great job to your team to manage the project and the timeline. Otherwise, we have a history of extending our planning projects. Especially my quick question, which I also typed in, was like, for all the 3 design options, have we done any predictive models, or is there any research data on the fatality rates? Because I kind of like option 3 the most, but I don't find it very practical of like being in a single family neighborhood with a lot of driveways of cars pulling in and out. It's really difficult for the homeowners to do that. So just trying to understand, like, as we are ranking and picking up these options, has there been any research or data related to how they react to fatalities?
Great question. So what we do know about the safety improvements of buffered bicycle lanes and bicycle lanes compared to the current condition right now, which is bicyclists sharing the roadway. From counts, we see around 200 bicyclists are traveling on Pruneridge in a given day. And so they're sharing the roadway with vehicles. And so from the research that's pretty well established now. We see about a 53% reduction in crashes between vehicles and bicyclists when there's a presence of a dedicated bicycle lane or bicycle space. The protected bikeway or separated bikeway that you just mentioned, Atisha, it's relatively new, and so we're still collecting a lot of data out there. What researchers tell us is that it's still safer from mixing with high-speed traffic, but there's an opportunity for some of those collisions that you mentioned. And that's why what Ryan talked about, creating a little more visibility at driveways is important. One thing to keep in mind about residential driveways is that for a vehicle backing out of a driveway, residential driveway, typically it's a lot fewer times in a given day than a commercial driveway, where new drivers are going to be coming and interacting, crossing that bikeway all the time. And so a residential driver is going to know and recognize that they need to look both ways look for a bicyclist just as they would for a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk today. So it's a little bit different. It's a new configuration. They're becoming more and more popular, but it's a new design. And so it's a little bit pushing the envelope. What we do know about these types of designs is that it feels more comfortable for kids, seniors, and novice riders, adults that are novices, because it provides that actual physical separation with the parked car between them and high-speed traffic. And so it attracts more people who want to try out bicycling maybe for the first time, or these more vulnerable road users. And with increased numbers, we see the rates of bicycle collisions go down, even though there are more people out there riding. So it's a more comfortable option for more people. And that's why it's being introduced as one of the possible concepts for consideration.
Great. Just a follow-up question on between option 2 and 3. Do you know what percentage of street parking difference is there? Because option, between the parking separated bike lanes versus not, and giving all those, buffers to back up the cars.
The parking survey is being conducted, and we should have some results at the next community workshop about that. We're going to be looking at parking that happens during the day, in the morning, afternoon, and at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. And we're looking at that on weekdays and also on the weekend. And so hopefully we'll have some information to bring back and talk about the parking utilization, how well it's being utilized right now. Thanks so much for your comments.
I hope you're taking care of all the people who permanently park their private cars on public right-of-way.
Thanks for the feedback. All right, next up, I want to open it up to Nicholas. Nicholas, thank you very much.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I would just like to ask everyone to compare the driving experience they experience today on Heading as opposed to the driving experience they have on Pruneridge now. If you really, really believe that Heading made a better thoroughfare than Pruneridge, then I call you a road vegan. And I don't think that any of these improvements, so-called improvements, they're not going to make Pruneridge better. They're going to make it worse. They're going to, and I hope that everyone's that is in favor of this eventually someday has their life-saving ambulance delayed by just a little tiny bit.
All right, thanks for your feedback. All right, let's see. Next up, Vivek. Go ahead, Vivek.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, hi. I mean, whatever the decision happens, I would like to highlight only one point, which is don't think about this corridor in isolation as it connects on one side to Winchester and on the other side to Pruneridge, continuing on beyond Pomeroy. And what I have observed as someone living right on Pruneridge is that those are the points at which when there is a change in the format, in the layout of these lanes, confusion happens. So when a 4-lane suddenly becomes 2-lane, people driving towards Pomeroy suddenly realize that, oh, this lane is a right-only lane, and they suddenly have to merge onto the left lane. And that's where, so whatever the new design, whether you make it a 4-lane or a 2-lane, depending on how people vote, but you just make it uniform across. You don't think about this as in isolation.
Thank you for your feedback. Okay, next up, we have Leah Millman.
I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you. Thanks for being here.
Sure. I'm speaking for myself as a resident of the county of Santa Clara, not as a member of the BPAC to which I belong in a neighboring city. So with option 3, there is no way to prevent vehicles from parking closer to the curb or from homeowners from putting trash cans or yard debris or whatever it is into the bicycle lane. The only way you can prevent vehicles from actually parking in the bike lane in that option 3 is if you have a physical barrier, either low barriers like San Jose does, or more of a cement divide like on a Raspadero in Palo Alto as a good example, where there's parking on one side, a bike lane on the other, and then the street is closer to the parking side, and it's a physical barrier. So the other thing is why for the unsignalized intersections, are you not considering elevated pedestrian crossings in terms of, having it slightly elevated from the roadway? It gives better visibility to drivers that there is a, pedestrian in the crosswalk rather than being at the same street level. And then rather than having a flasher that's activated by the pedestrian, why not have a flasher that's automatically activated as soon as a pedestrian is, in the crosswalk kind of thing, like a hawk crossing or what have you. Also, with are there plans for in terms of reducing the speed limit with any of the configurations?
Great questions and great information for us to think about as we refine these in the next iteration. One thing that I think, just to clarify a little bit, that maybe was confused, is that the curb extensions that were shown in paint and posts, as Ryan described them, those are quick build options that are low cost and can help improve the crossing condition, but they could be done temporarily as a pilot while additional funding is being raised. So I think that the long-term option would be to look at actually a raised curb extension, not shown here in the concept, but something that we could describe in the final report. But your other comments were well taken, so thank you for providing those.
Yeah, I think especially at unsignalized intersections, unsignalized pedestrians crossings, I should say, that raising that pedestrian from the roadbed really improves pedestrian visibility.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right, let's go to the Q&A question. We'll come back to the folks that have their hand raised. So if you got your hand raised, hopefully it doesn't get too tired, and we'll come back to you. But Jonathan's here with the city of Santa Clara. Jonathan, any questions from the Q&A box that you want to address?
Jeff, I just, if you could address there were 2 questions, actually 3 questions, just about the consideration of bus service or bus stops within the concepts.
Yeah, that's a great question. We looked at that. Pruneridge is not currently on VTA, which is your bus operator's schedule in terms of on Pruneridge, and so it's not part of their long-range plans to provide that. But going north-south, I think we could look at that more closely. Again, the concepts tonight are not site-specific, but something that we could look at where there is a nearby bus stop providing an additional shelter, additional amenities for people that need to access the bus. So that's something we could look at and describe in the next iteration of concepts.
Right, and just to add on to that, Jeff, what we've shown today, all those concepts are compatible with bus service. The different designs can be applied to those areas. So just as a reminder there.
Thanks, Ryan. Jonathan, are there more that we should answer from the Q&A window?
Let's see, there were just two somewhat related questions. One was about concept 2 and the location of the buffer in relation to the door zone. And somewhat related to that was for concept number 3, is the bike lane wide enough so there isn't a risk of riding in the gutter between the buffer and the curb when concept 3 had the parking relocated?
Okay. maybe it'd be helpful if I go to those slides. And Ryan, do you want to speak to these? And then we'll go back to the folks with their hands raised.
Yeah, sure thing. Pull up concept 2.
Oh, there we go.
All right, so concept 2, for this one, we showed the buffer on the traffic side, but it still allows for a 5-foot bike lane and an 8-foot parking, which is ample room for both of those things to happen. The reason we chose to show this on the traffic side was because of the residential nature of the street. Generally tends to have lower turnover, less people getting in and out of their cars as you would necessarily a commercial area where there's lots of people getting in and out of cars where the door is a major concern. The buffer does allow that space for a cyclist to move out of the way if someone's entering or exiting their car without having to enter the vehicle lane. It's a great question. So for concept 3, again, these are typological kind of sections that show the gutter is something we do talk about quite a bit when we talk about curbside bike lanes.
Ryan, do you want to describe that for folks that understand what the difference is between asphalt
perfect.
and the
Yeah,
gutter?
so working from left to right in this image here, we've got the 5 feet for the sidewalk as it exists today. And then right next to it, we have 5 feet designated for a bike lane. If you go out to Pruneridge right now, what you'll see is a width of concrete right up against the curb. That's what the gutter. And I believe the person asking the question today about the gutter width is, will that width be included in what's allotted for cyclists? And the answer is, in this situation, yes. But what we've shown here is 8 total feet. So if that gutter is 24 inches, you still have 6 feet of bike lane. It's a consideration, as this person points out, is that often the asphalt doesn't meet very perfectly to the gutter. But with this configuration and the extra buffer, there's still 6 feet of bike lane that doesn't even include the gutter.
Great. Thanks for providing that update. I'm going to go back to our Q&A. Okay, let's go back to folks on the phones. Timothy, you're live.
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Great. Yes, I'm in favor of either of the second or the third option. But I wanted to ask, has there been consideration with respect to traffic speeds on adjacent or intersecting streets, whether they might increase from people looking to get off from Pruneridge and take shortcuts? I'm specifically thinking of Dolores, Los Padres, especially streets like that.
A great question. We, in addition to doing the parking study that I described before, we are going to be modeling traffic flows using these different concepts. And so that's in the works now, and that's based off of traffic counts that were taken historically before COVID and then during COVID, and we're modeling and adjusting for those pre-COVID volumes. And so we know they're going to be lower from what we took. It's not just on Pruneridge, but we're also looking at multiple locations in the neighboring streets. So at about over 20 different intersections in the neighborhood. And so we'll be able to tell what those impacts might be to side streets.
Oh, thank you.
Great question. Thanks for the question. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's go to Deborah. You're next.
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first is, at the top of this presentation, you mentioned that one of the goals of the project is to address climate impacts of transit. So what kind of assumptions are being made? First of all, has any of that modeling been done? And if so, what kind of assumptions are being made about what % of people would get out of their cars and use the bicycle lanes instead? The reason I'm asking this is if by making these changes, you manage to entice 1% of the vehicle drivers to make their trips on bicycle instead, but the remaining 99% of vehicles now take twice as long to make their trip. So they're emitting twice as much, roughly twice as much carbon to make the same trip. How does that benefit the goal of decreasing emissions and improving lessening our impact on climate change? And just to get to my second question quickly, I just wanted to follow up on something I asked at the first workshop a few months ago, where I was saying that it seems to me that one possible way of making Pruneridge and the surrounding neighborhood a complete street, that one really good way to benefit the bicyclists is not to force them on to Pruneridge with all the surrounding traffic, but to take them off of Pruneridge and find a parallel path, like maybe down Forbes or something, where bicyclists wouldn't be competing with the Pruneridge traffic. So was that concept even looked at, or was that not even considered?
Okay, great questions. So for the first one, just make sure I got it right. So what kind of assumptions looking at for greenhouse gas emissions? I'd have to go back to the city's climate action plan that calls out reducing single occupancy vehicles and converting a portion of those, if you can convert even just a portion of those to active modes, walking or bicycling, to help achieve the city's goals. And about taking twice as long, is that going to be factored in? As part of the scope of this study, we're not looking at specifically at modeling getting to that level. And I don't think there are really good models that I could point to give you that kind of information to say, if this one bicycle facility is built, these are the types of actual reductions that you could see. I don't think, though, that it's going to be creating twice as long. Again, we're going to model that and look at delay that you face now as a driver on this corridor, and the delay that could be impacted by any of these concepts. What we do know from past experience with a road diet converting from 4 travel lanes to 3 is that on streets that carry less than 20,000 vehicles per day, that coming down to 1 lane in each direction with that center turn lane carries about the same amount of vehicles in the same time. There could be some impacts, and we will be happy to share those and model those and bring those back. But I don't think it's going to be a doubling of the delay. So I'd be really happy to share that once we get to the point of making that public. Thanks for the feedback. About the complete streets, the parallel path, let me make sure I don't get your second question. That was looked at in the city's bicycle master planning process at parallel routes. This project, completing this gap in the bicycle network, because there is a bike facility that leads up to it on heading at Winchester, and then also from Pomeroy to Apple Campus, was the #1 most called out for gap closure in the bicycle network, principally because bicyclists want that direct connection, just like vehicles and drivers appreciate now. And so that was the one thing that kind of came out as a top priority of filling in that gap. And so it's very well taken. Good point that there are some parallel routes that could be looked at and enhanced, and those were called out for in the bike plan. But the project here is looking and see what are the benefits and potential trade-offs for a bike facility on Pruneridge. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for being here. Okay, let's go to Helen Johnson. Helen, you're able to talk.
Okay, well, some of my concerns are similar to what others have said, like Timothy Swenson mentioned the neighboring streets, and I live on Forest Avenue, and what we've noticed is a lot more bicyclists coming down Forest, which, quite honestly, we welcome because they're better than the others. There's so much congestion at Winchester and Pruneridge that cars are pulling off and coming down Forest at speeds of about 50 miles an hour, and the whole street is lined with children, and it's really become very unsafe. And I just wondered, have you looked at this unintended consequence of slowing down Pruneridge? Because it's really created an unsafe situation over here on Forest.
Thanks for the feedback. As I mentioned, we are looking at the potential for cut-through traffic as part of that traffic study. Thank you. Okay, next up we have Tim. Tim, go ahead with your question or your comment.
unmute myself. Thank you very much. Yeah, I use this corridor a lot as a cyclist, and I appreciate direct connections because I'm moving slower than a car, and I appreciate getting through faster and encouraging bicycles that way. Has there been any thought of raising the entire, like the protected bikeway up to the level of sidewalk and making a super, super, super wide sidewalk with a bike designated space so that cars with handicapped people and others can actually be right against the curb to let them out so they don't have to get out into, you know, a bike lane and then have to hop the curb, which is harder for handicapped people?
Tim, great question. It's something that we looked at briefly, but I think just the general cost of it became something that doing that would be much more expensive than these. But if that's something that you think that should get a second look, it's something we can break back to the city's team and take another look.
And then one follow-up comment I made, I had the question about the bicycles out of door zones. Even though this is a residential area, biking in a door zone is so dangerous because you don't know when it's going to happen. So generally cyclists like staying out of the door zone so they don't ever get surprised, because it's not, if you see it happen way far in front of you, that's fine, but the accidents happen when it just pops open. And so I really like having the bike lane completely out of any risk of hitting anything, such as a door popping open, even in a residential area.
Great, Tim. Thanks for the feedback. Is your suggestion that to flip the buffer lane and move it from the bicycle to the parking lane side?
Or use some of that on the parking lane side, and actually maybe even eat into the parking lane side a little bit and make the parking feel narrower so they park closer to the curb, because sometimes cars just park right up against the bike lane and not against the curb, and then the door is really a door. You need to be about 5 feet away from a car to be safe from the door popping open when you're a cyclist, which uses up the entire width of the regular bike lane.
Okay, great. Thank you for your feedback. Thanks for
Thanks.
being here. William, you're next. Sorry, William, there we go. Go ahead, William, with your comment or feedback.
This is Tim again. Someone gave me the unmute.
Sorry, this is my, try this.
Can you hear me?
William, yes, thank you. And apologies for my inabilities there. So go ahead with your comment. We can hear you.
Okay. I ride my bike pretty much every day. And where I get onto Pruneridge is typically near Cronin. And I try to avoid Pruneridge because I don't generally think it's safe enough. So I do try to use some of the side streets, but sometimes that's problematic. And the idea of number 2 or possibly number 3, I think would be a huge improvement for those of us who are riding on there. And I would find it much more safe. I also wanted to comment that it's not the same all through Pruneridge. The area that is most problematic for me is from San Tomas over to Cypress, because there's a lot of commercial activity there. And a lot of times I end up, most of the time, have to ride right in traffic. And so I heard a comment just a little while ago that you weren't looking at specific areas, but I think that that area needs to be looked at especially, because I think that's the most problematic.
Thanks for the feedback, William. Appreciate that perspective. And thanks again for everybody who's been here, who's voiced your opinions and comments through the polls, through asking questions. We've got more questions in the Q&A box. I don't see anybody with their hand raised, but while you're formulating your comments or your question, let's go over to the Q&A window here. Jonathan, anything that you want to point out or answer live with the group?
There were 2 questions about garbage pickup. This specific question was just garbage pickup for each option. Perhaps if Ryan could just speak on that. Sure. While the concept is up for everyone to see.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, Jonathan. So typically what happens here is the garbage pickup will happen outside of the bike lane. In this concept here, you could put it right at the end of your driveway like you do now. And in concept 3, it would have to be pushed farther out into the reserved parking area. But you'll notice in concept 3, there are all those areas that pull back the parking from the driveways where they can be picked up from the roadway. This is a common concern for complete street projects, and it's a combination of improvements like you see here in the road, but also marketing campaigns, programming, cooperation with the refuse and recycling services. So it is a common concern. There are solutions working across the country, but it is more of a team effort for sure.
Great. Jonathan, others that you think we should answer, do you want to address?
Just one question here from Denise Roderick. It's why do you believe the traffic load will be reduced following the recovery of the economy after COVID? Only because building density and corporate expansion such as Apple is increasing. So I think just generally the question was about our assumptions for the traffic analysis.
Yeah, it's a great question, Denise. Thank you. We are modeling increases of volumes to see what they would do. So I should have clarified, and I apologize. It's your current counts, your current volumes will be modeled, and we're also looking at what's projected in the future, and that will also be modeled. So it's not just making a decision for today, but looking at the future. So that'll be all part of the analysis that you'll get to review along with City Council before they make a decision. But excellent question, and thanks for helping us clarify.
I think one question also, since no one else's hands raised, is about from Vincent, who's asking about the bicycle master plan in San Jose and potentially how this connects into that. I don't know if we had looked at that, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, I did not share a slide that shows maybe the city's bicycle plan and the San Jose's bicycle plan. I will just say that the city of San Jose is a key stakeholder in this and is coordinating. We've been coordinating closely, so they've seen all these designs, and we'll be making sure that the designs mesh with their plans. So I appreciate that comment. All right, I'm seeing a lot of good comments in the Q&A box. I've got a hand raised again. So great. So even if you've already had a chance to speak, we'll be here. The meeting is, we'll stay around. I want to maybe give one more person the chance to talk. I'll talk about next steps, and then if anybody wants to stick around to ask a few more questions, the team will stay on. So Vivek, why don't you close us out, and then I'll talk about next steps.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my question. I think in the surveys that you've done so far, I see, majority of the people involved are voting that let's make Pruneridge safer. And one aspect of making safe is how can the traffic be slowed down. I walk on Pruneridge every day, and I see cars exceeding the speeds of like 40 miles, some even up to 50 miles an hour. So while you made it very clear in some of your comments that speed is not one aspect of the study, but I think it's a crucial aspect of making Pruneridge better, how you can slow down this traffic, which is a menace right now. So please include that is my request to you.
Thank you for the feedback. And one of the great benefits, I think, of narrowing down the travel lanes, which is an option number one, concept number one, as well as going down to the road diet, is they've been seeing reductions in speeding. The great thing about the road diet is that where you have two lanes of traffic, a slower, more prudent driver that's obeying the speed limit is maybe in one lane. And then the person that really wants to move quickly down this corridor, especially between San Tomas, between Saratoga and Winchester, there aren't any signals. And so there's a lot of free room to really speed up. And that's where I think we see a lot of it. And the residents, you hear it constantly, the drone of high-speed vehicles. With the road diet condition, the safe and prudent driver sets the speed limit, and the cars behind them have to follow that pacing. And so there is a reduction in speeding when we see the road diet. That's one of the benefits of that versus some of the other trade-offs that I think a lot of people have talked about there. So yes, that's something that we'll definitely be looking at. In addition to the curb extensions, bringing the curbs out at intersections is another traffic calming feature that we can do on arterials. We don't have the option to do things on residential streets like speed humps or chicanes or diverters that you might see in local streets, because this still needs to serve as a primary access route for first responders. And so we can't diminish significantly that response time. And so it's part of the toolbox of different traffic calming features that we have available to us that we'll be looking to recommend in this plan. So thanks for the comment. I want to go to next steps real quick. So in the short term, we're going to complete the technical analysis. We'll be developing the cost estimates for these concepts and sharing the refined concepts with you, the public, again, as well as City Council. And in the long term, this is if the City Council wishes to move forward. The city will then go back to identifying funding for the design, laying out this, how it will look at each intersection, each driveway, all the different intersection improvements, and then also coming up with funding to construct and build it. So again, that's long-term and only if City Council decides to move forward with this. For us, we're still in the relatively early stages. You're at the community workshop number 3. If your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers couldn't be here tonight, please let them know that Saturday afternoon we'll be holding the very similar webinar, the same webinar, in fact, same information. They can join us there. We'll leave these concepts up for input through August, and then we'll start working on revising them and coming up with a public draft plan. That will be shared out in the spring, and then we'll go to City Council for their review and consideration next summer. Again, and this is my last slide, please, and we're encouraging folks to take the survey online, send us an email, call and leave a voice message, or attend future community meetings. We really do want to hear from as many people as possible so that we can give City Council good information about what the community wants to see in the future of Pruneridge. And so again, if you want to stick around, ask more questions, we'll stick around for a few more minutes. We'll be monitoring the Q&A windows. We'll be looking to see if anyone wants to raise their hand and talk. Otherwise, I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you so much for being here, and please stay engaged. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Okay, I've got a few folks with their hands up. So let's see, Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, I had one comment and a couple of quick questions. As a cyclist, I recognize that like the gutter often takes up quite a bit of your bike lane. I've seen this a few times in San Jose where they put the buffered bike lane against the gutter, and that actually makes for a very poor bicycling experience. And you end up having to basically bicycle in the buffered area to avoid leaves and other things in the gutter. So that's really needs to be kind of factored out. And I had one other kind of question is I noticed in your concepts, you're using 11-foot lane widths as opposed to like 10-foot. Why did you choose a 11-foot lane width? Because usually people drive to the speed of the lane, right? So 12-foot lanes are kind of highway, right? So people tend to go 50 miles an hour if they're driving down a 12-foot lane, but people drive slower with narrower lanes. What, I guess, how did you come up with that size or concept? Thanks.
Yep, great questions. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it. 11 feet, certainly we wanted to reduce them down from the current 12 down to 11, smaller if we can get it. 11 is right now, I think, the city's preferred width for travel lanes, something that we could go back and take another look at again. And you are right that those dimensions that they come down has a traffic calming effect, but something that we could take a look at. I think some of the considerations, though, would be like trash vehicles. If there's a consideration for any future transit, I know that they prefer 11 feet, that maybe want to provide that buffer. So something that we could look at. I'm not sure, Jonathan or Carol, if you want to also think about that. I think going down to 10 feet has a bigger citywide implication as well for your travel lane widths.
Yeah, I thought the National Association of City Transportation Officials recommends 10-foot lanes for safe, as a good safe lane, especially for kind of maybe city streets for if there's pedestrians.
Yeah, we could look at that. Jonathan,
yeah, I can speak on that. I know we did. Jonathan, I guess Jonathan Evans, you're correct about citing the association's 10-foot lane widths. We did take a look at that, and there's also one small caveat that the association mentions is that to consider 11-foot lanes when it's adjacent to another lane that's going the opposite direction. So I think we took a look at it. We're trying to consider, I guess, the feeling of comfort if a person's coming home from work and they're turning into that center lane, waiting there between two cars going in opposite directions on either side of them. And so we felt that giving that extra 1 foot there, I guess 2 feet in total, so 1 foot on either side of them, it would make it a little bit more comfortable for them. That's in the residential areas. And then just considering some of the, there's a few shopping areas on Pruneridge, not many, but there's a couple of shopping areas adjacent. So just considering if in case there's larger vehicles traveling to and from there. So that's why we had considered that. Thank you.
Great. Gabriella, you're up.
Hi there. Thank you so much for putting this together. I cycle every day. I don't take Pruneridge by design because of, the unsafe conditions for cyclists. I like the considerations. I like the different concepts. I just wanted to I guess, piggyback on another commenter about the speed, motorist speeds. So, regardless of whatever design, eventually gets selected, whatever can be done from an engineering perspective to reduce motorist speed will go a long way to making this feel safer for pedestrians and for cyclists. And also it's safer for motorists. I think it's pretty well established that slower speeds is safer for everyone who uses a road. So I hope that's really taken into consideration. Sounds like it has, but I think that, we can't just rely on enforcement, right, from police enforcement. It really needs to be as part of the engineering design. So I just wanted to reiterate that point because I think it's very important because it helps everyone.
Great. Thanks for that comment, Gabrielle. Okay, let's see. Next up, we've got Sukrit.
Oh.
Let's see. Did I get it right? Sukrit, can you see if I can do this?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so thank you so much for putting together this meeting. This is definitely a nice thing you guys are doing. I think that given the future of Silicon Valley, we're seeing a lot of new development. A lot more people are interested in biking and walking. There's concerns about pollution and climate change. I definitely think that prioritizing alternative modes of transportation like scootering, biking, and walking is definitely the right way to go. So talking about lane widths, I know that Jonathan, he previously talked about it. So like NACTO, like the National Association for City Design, they do actually say that 10-foot lanes for cars are appropriate. And I believe like all throughout Pruneridge, the speeds are around 25 miles per hour, which is definitely in the range where lanes can be as narrow as 10 feet. And additionally, most commercial vehicles like garbage trucks, fire engines, they're around 8 feet 4 inches wide, which means that they can actually fit in 10-foot lanes. So definitely what would be nice for you guys to consider would be taking a foot off the lanes and actually giving it to either the bike lane or the buffer. Because like you said, the gutter is relatively wide in some places. It can get clogged with leaves, and that can definitely be a danger for bicyclists if they are cycling and fall, or other times when the gutter is pretty clogged. So yeah, that's just a suggestion I have for you guys.
Thanks for the suggestion and feedback, and thanks for being here. All right, let's see. Next up, Betsy. Let's see, allow to, oops. Sorry, Betsy, you're next. Narayan, did I get that right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if any of these options are taking into consideration, the safety of people living on Pruneridge while they pull their cars off the driveway. Because I'm one person who's actually encountered an accident as I pulled my car off because I blindsided by a car that took a left and rear-ended me. I just wanted to see if any of these options have been, considered from the point of actually pulling the cars off the driveway and how safe they are for people, residents living on Pruneridge from that point of view.
Yeah, let me go back to concept and show some of the benefits for residents to the 3-lane or the 2-lane option here. There we go. And I think one of the benefits for this is that for cars that are turning onto a driveway, you can get out of the lane, and instead of having 2 traffic lanes that you're trying to wait and dodge, you've only got 1 lane of oncoming traffic to worry about, and that helps you get in. And then in terms of backing out, I think you have, again, hopefully reduced speeds, so people aren't going as fast, and you'll have to negotiate the 1 lane getting out. Ryan, I'm not sure if there's anything else I could describe on the driveways.
No, you've nailed it on this one. The other things are the possible traffic calming, which will make it easier. One thing that could be included is a bit of a hybrid between this one and the next one, where there's marked off areas at the end of the driveways. That allows for longer and wider view sheds for everyone to see each other coming along. So that can, if that's a real concern for you, let us know with the surveys, and your comment will be logged here. But that's something that can be incorporated in the previous one as well, to pull cars away from the edge of a driveway and allow for people exiting and entering a little bit more room to navigate and see what's happening in either direction.
Yeah, we're still collecting parking information, but one thing we know is that it's not 100% parked up and utilized, and so peeling back, a half a car space or maybe even a full car space at the driveways could create just more visibility and access, so that residents could have improved use of their driveways without those conflicts. So a great point, and something that can continue to be revised and looked at. All right, Betsy. See if I can get it right. Go ahead, Betsy.
All right, I found the unmute button this time, thanks. So for full transparency, I am also on the BPAC for the city of Santa Clara. The trash collection, it has been my observation that there are a certain number of people who still don't know that their trash can doesn't go on the sidewalk. So just be aware of that. I'm generally in favor of option 2 because largely for consistency with the facilities at either end of the corridor right now. And also I'm leery of parking protected bike lanes because there's sweeping issues. I think we are going to have trash can issues, even if we carefully instruct the residents what they're supposed to be doing. And I am concerned about visibility. I think there's been better attention to visibility in this design overall than many, but I am concerned about visibility in terms of, I would rather be able to be seen by somebody who's pulling in or out of a driveway. And I'm wondering if we have good data on traffic speeds from the areas that already have the road diet, including the San Jose facility. It qualitatively, having biked on heading before and after the bike lane that is there, it feels a little bit calmer to me, but I don't know. I would love to see the measured data on that, as well as collision and safety data. What else was I going to say? And I am, to the handful of people who have expressed support for the 10-foot traffic lanes, I am conceptually, I'm on board with that. In practice, the city buses are 10.5 feet wide, so that's why they ask for 11 if there is going to be possible bus route on a street. I think that's what I had to say, so I will put the rest in an email.
Okay, thanks, Betsy. Appreciate you being here, and thanks for your feedback. Well, folks, it is 7:30 now. I don't see anybody else with the hand raised. We'll hang out again. We can stay as long as folks want to keep talking, but I just want to say thanks again for folks that have stuck around to have their comments recorded. We'll be putting together a quick summary of this first round or second round of workshops and post that online. So just want to say thanks again for being here, for participating. Help us get the word out to your friends, neighbors, coworkers. Go on the project website. Ben, if you could, just send out that information one more time in the chat. Let me go share it with everybody. I think that we've hit it a couple times, but we're really looking forward to getting the word out.
Hey Jeff, if you can maybe
Yeah,
speak
go
on,
ahead, Jonathan.
there were 2 more questions in the Q&A. They're similar questions. It was just, I know the project is ongoing, but the questions were just about San Jose or Santa Clara residents' experiences for the sections that did have a roadway change. Like, I guess if we have obtained any of their opinions or input based on what their experience was, since we're considering that in this section as well.
Yeah, something we can collect some of that information and bring that back when we're putting together a report. Nothing that we've heard other than some anecdotal experiences so far. Okay, and I see that from Don and Vincent, basically asking the same question. Yep, we can look into that and bring that back as well, those experiences. Okay. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you all for being here, for sharing your feedback, for being part of this planning process. We hope you have a wonderful evening and look forward to continuing to dialogue with you as we work on the next phase. Thanks so much for being here. Have a good night.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.